Science has made an awful lot of grave mistakes. Let's take a look at my list of those. Science has been wrong. Here's our 10 times where science has been wrong. But science has been wrong about many other things. It is possible that in building their observations that they can let bias in. In fact, there was a time that they used electroshock therapy to cure homosexuals. They thought it was a disease. It was labeled a mental disorder. So we also saw that science was really wrong when doctors told people it was okay to smoke. That was a big problem brought on by greed and affected by avarice. So we have to recognize that that was another scientific mistake. One of the biggest one was the antibiotics generation. We now know that it upsets the bowel flora, creates big giant problems, and mental disease starts with antibiotics most of the time. It creates a problem. Now we know that antibiotics don't work. Ear infections, sore throats, diarrhea, they don't really work like we thought they did. Antibiotics was a case where science was wrong. Okay? Now we also need to know science was wrong about sugar. Yes, we started putting sugar into everything. Stripped away all the different plant fiber, put this concentrated sugar, and we now know is unhealthy. That was a big problem. Science was really wrong about this one. In fact, science was being bought by the sugar industry. The sugar industry was buying science and twisting the facts to try to blame the cholesterol and fat for what was really happening in cardiovascular disease and in cancer, and how it affected our children. Sugar is just bad for you. Boiling foods in oil. Another time science was wrong. We have to stop this. It's creating a problem. And most importantly, we need to recognize that synthetic anything is an insult to the body. Another time that science was really wrong. The discovery of drilling for oil deep in the earth and the internal combustion engine, this started to drive the need for oil. And that need for oil has just started everybody building wells, all different types of things, trying to get this profit. And along came Rudolf Diesel. And Rudolf Diesel built an engine to run on vegetable oil to break the stranglehold financial dominance that big oil had. He displayed this in Paris. Everybody was wowed. And then he was going to England over the channel, and
over the side.
What happened was big oil executives threw him off a boat one night. He was thrown into the ocean. You see,
special interest. It's a special interest. It's the utility companies and the petroleum companies and the other special interests. They're the ones that have blocked progress in the Congress of the United States and in the administration. That's a little straight talk.
The tyranny of big oil, how it has twisted, lied, cheated. Big oil has conquered the world, put us all at risk, and put our environment at risk. Profit over people, profit over the planet, profit over anything. Science made one of the biggest mistakes ever, thinking that instead of growing our oil, that we had to drill for it. And science is behind this massive mistake that could threaten all of our lives. If we could farm our fuel instead of the fossil fuel, we could really save humanity. The plants would take the carbon dioxide out of the air, but we're looking at dire conditions, grave danger, and science could have stopped this. Science could have stood up more to big oil. Another big mistake that science made is allopathy. It's a form of medicine to treat symptoms. You go to the doctor, says, "What's wrong with you? Give me your symptoms." Science is wrong about this. Chelier came up with the idea of the last straw, stress, accumulated stress. And he gave us this general adaptation syndrome. The alarm comes along, produces a symptom. Then we adapt. We start to form resistance. And as we adapt, the symptoms go away. Then we slowly adapt to the stress and get weaker and weaker onto death. But since the symptoms go away as we get sicker, the most true thing is being symptom-free is not an indicator of health. Being symptom-free is not an indicator of health. Science is wrong about allopathy as a form of medicine. We need a form of medicine built on stress, built on lifestyle, built on reducing the stressors and dealing with stress. And perhaps the greatest mistake of science ever, GMO, genetically modified organisms, and genetically modified viruses. In 2012, 2013, the courts allowed genetic modified organisms for people to be able to make life and to get patents, and they did this for profit.
We've never had food companies this powerful in our history.
Everything we've done in modern agriculture is to grow it faster, fatter, bigger, cheaper.
If you could grow a chicken in 49 days, why would you want one you got to grow in 3 months?
When you go through the supermarket, there is an illusion of diversity. So much of our industrial food turns out to be rearrangements of corn.
Genetically modified corn and foods are everywhere in our society.
Genetic engineering is really a radical revolution in food production. It's really a cell invasion technology. You know, people have heard they're taking a flounder gene and putting it in tomato so the tomato can last in cold temperatures. But people don't ask, how does that flounder gene get in that tomato? How does it get in there?
Patents historically have been for things like, I've used the example of a carburetor. Well, a carburetor doesn't get up one day and start replicating itself everywhere and introducing itself into your car so that all of a sudden then you get sued for patent infringement.
Due to the profit made by patent GMOs, the cost of the genetic splicing devices, the CRISPRs, etc., drop dramatically. And then ex-employees start to create different viruses. Genetically modified virus, GMV. Corona might have just been the first. It was either accidentally made or made for a reason, released on the public.
In other news, the CDC is receiving reports of a possible flu outbreak in San Francisco.
More reports of flu cases along the border, but officials are saying they aren't connected.
As time goes by, other viruses are made. This cascades into greater and greater problems as more and more deaths happen around the world. With an inability of the immune systems of the people to keep up. Well, I'm sure that there's other mistakes that science has made, and I think that you might know a couple of your own, but I thought that this list really needed to be looked at so we understand. We need to put people over profit, not profit over people, and not always believe in science. And another grave mistake of science was the Dust Bowl. Science helped people strip away the prairie and to plant crops that weren't designed for this area without really thinking. Science helped these people destroy a massive, massive, massive hunk of land that created the Dust Bowl and plunged America into a dramatic problem where dust filled the air and blacked out the sky.
The dust storms bring darkness at noon.
The worst of these black blizzards struck with a vengeance on April 14, 1935. It is often called Black Sunday by survivors, and the Texas Panhandle was the hardest hit area of the state. The storm carried the dust and topsoil so far that ships anchored 300 miles off the coast reported finding dust on their decks.
Science has made grave mistakes that have cost people jobs and cost countries living. We need to really reevaluate and think much harder.
I could be your angel, hero. Would you wake up if I asked you to wake